Good evening. Good evening, good afternoon. Okay. Ladies and gentlemen, it's a pleasure for me again to be with you and with my fellow distinguished panelists here. The main goal of this event is to provide you with a brief summary and also the recommendations which stemmed out from the workshop that we, the Office for Outer Space Affairs, we conducted together with IAF. This is a tradition that we do every year in the different locations, and it's, if I may say so, Christian, is a sort of a flagship of the entire IAC, let's say, kermesse. Well, what I can say is that we really touched at the workshop some important topics related to inclusiveness. And so we've been discussing about representation of women, how to have the voice of the young people heard on the main challenges that we have, how we involve the indigenous communities, people with disabilities, and other minority groups in the space community. We feel that diversity is really an asset in what we do, is not a problem at all, and therefore we really want to be open and inclusive as far as possible. So, and so the questions we've been trying to answer are why we have this situation, which are the obstacles that impede the participation of all these groups in the space community, or at least I would say even better, the participation of these groups at the right level, and which kind of actions we have to take in order to try to solve these problems. And in fact, the workshop was entitled Ensuring Inclusiveness Through Space-Based Application and Space Exploration, because clearly the topic we have is space. You know, the Office for Outer Space Affairs is the only UN entity devoted 100% to space affairs, and we range from space law and policy to capacity building to regulatory activities, down to transparency and confidence building measure, and what we have to do in order to bridge the space divide. The office is in reality working on a lot of related topics, which are also related to the 17 Sustainable Development Goals, which means linked to the 2030 Agenda for Sustainable Development, where we see all the member states of the United Nations really committed to try to fulfill their obligations by 2030, which is a milestone quite important in our plan. We have projects like Space for Women, Space for Youth, Access to Space for All, etc. So without entering in too many details, also because I understand that we have on one side a lot of messages to be passed, and on the other side not so much time. So I would like to give the floor to my fellow panelists. The first one in my list being Marius Joan Piso. So you want to come here? Or you prefer there? I prefer to. Okay, good, please.
I prefer. It's okay. I prefer to sit here because it's a discussion. It's a panel, not a session of presentation. I'm trying to speak about inclusiveness from the point of view of an agency and of the industry. The main problem in our job maybe is not the money, it's the people. Because it's very difficult to have people trained for space activities. On the other hand, space is a multidisciplinary area in which you cannot find, let's say, there are only a few master's degrees or engineering areas called space engineering, space science, but space, there are only a few universities are providing these degrees, because space needs longer training, and you should get the awareness in many parallel areas. So this feature is also adding to the capability of space to create inclusiveness. And I can add another feature of inclusiveness, which is a bit more complicated because it is related to the new, I can say, threats of artificial intelligence. So in the era, space is one of the promoter of artificial intelligence because technical reasons. We need, for example, to communicate with Mars, to send a command to a Mars rover. We need between 4 minutes and 14 minutes or something like this. It's a bit too much. So this device should be provided with AI. At the same time, the collision avoidance systems to avoid the collision with debris, they also should act faster than the capabilities of a human. And the human intelligence will, artificial intelligence will generate probably, analysts say, will generate unemployment and will make people orient to some issues that robots cannot do. And let's say, the methods to avoid this phenomena of unemployment in artificial intelligence might be developed also for inclusiveness, for space. And space is just an appropriate field of activity in which we might work almost with everybody. Thank you.
So thank you very much. It's interesting also is let's say a summary in a way of what has been discussed during the workshop, and I would like to give the floor to Christian Feitinger for providing the point of view of IAF. Christian.
Thank you very much. I'm very pleased to be here on this panel. I tell you why, because the workshop which the IAF is organizing together with the UNOOSA has a very strong tradition, and as the chair has said already before in the introduction, this is a kind of flagship that opens up the scene before the start of the IAC. So this year, with the 27th edition of this workshop, we are tackling on a very important topic, how to ensure inclusiveness and focusing on space applications and exploration. And this is very close to the heart of the IAF. You may know that our president has announced an IAF Global Innovation Agenda in 2016, where he has put several points as focal points for the activities of the Federation. First and foremost, it was the fostering of a principle of 3G diversity, 3G standing for gender, generation, geography. And that is inclusiveness. That's what we in the Federation want to be. We want to attract actors in space from all over the world, from space nations, but also from emerging countries, developing countries. We want to attract the youth, but we do not want to not attract also the senior experts. We need to have them both. We need to have this transfer of knowledge and experience. And of course, the gender diversity, which we are trying to attract more and more also and encourage more and more female authors, female specialists and experts to join the Federation, also in leading functions. So how are we doing that? We've created for diversity a platform which we called International Platform for Diversity and Equality in Astronautics, or IDEA, and we are arranging every year different events at our big events. So tomorrow's day will actually dedicate it to diversity. Diversity Day will see several events starting from very early in the morning with a breakfast, a lunch, and other events during the entire day. Another focus in the agenda, which I was mentioning before, was including and attracting more and more emerging countries and new communities to space. And I think there we have also made significant progress by attracting more and more organizations from emerging countries to join the Federation as members, but also attract more and more authors to come here. And of course, especially for this aspect, the workshop we are organizing is a very important tool to do that, because that gives us the opportunity to attract authors from emerging countries and help them to be able to come to the conference, to the IAC here, which they most probably otherwise would not be able to do. We are also, and I want to refer to something that was presented on this stage just before this panel. We've had the first global conference for space and emerging countries, and that took place in May this year, actually, in Morocco, in Marrakesh, and that attracted an amazing audience. We've had 400 people from a lot of different emerging countries, but also we had the representatives of the space nations, the so-called space nations, and we could really foster the dialogue there. I've taken the freedom to bring a few brochures on the highlights of this conference with me, and I've put them just here in front of us on the podium, so please feel free to take some of them. But to come close to my end, we don't have too much time. I also want to say that exploration, that was another topic that was touched upon in the workshop, is also something that is an extremely up-to-date topic now. I mean, you see it here at the IAC. Everybody is talking about exploration initiatives, and the Federation, of course, is taking that up as well. We are organizing the next global conference on space exploration next year in St. Petersburg from the 9th to 11th of June. And we will arrange again a program that will have a very strong focus on attracting a very diverse community, the young generation, and emerging countries as well, because I think even space exploration is not a topic that is limited to space nations only. There is something for emerging countries. I'm only mentioning the aspect of inspiration for the young generation, also and specifically in emerging countries, but that is only one aspect. Closing, I would like to thank very much the Director of the UN Office for Outer Space Affairs, Simonetta Di Pippo, for her continuous support and for the great leadership in preparing this workshop, and of course her staff, Shirish, and the colleagues, Iriana, for arranging this so well and working so positively together with my colleagues from my office to make this workshop a permanent success. Thank you very much.
Thank you very much, Christian. Indeed, is a great example of cooperation. IAF is really looking at the world in space, and you did a great job also to grow a lot in the last few years. And so did we. We have different perspective. We are mainly dealing with member states, even if we tried, and with a certain success up to now, to involve all the potential stakeholders. So in a way, putting together our efforts is increasing the possibility for developing in emerging countries experts to be really in the places where they should be in order to learn, in order to improve their networks, and in order to foster international cooperation. So thank you very much. And I would like to go to Daniel Wood from MIT. Daniel knows us very well since long, and every time we can we have the pleasure to invite you and attend our event. So please, if you could provide some insights from your standpoint.
Thank you so much. It is truly an honor to be here. I would like to partly share credit as well to AIAA as one, of course, the key organizers of the overall IAC. Because of their role, they wanted to ask someone to play the role of representing AIAA also in thinking about the plans for the workshop. And I was so thankful that they asked me to link AIAA to the event. I can really thank this particular series of workshops for playing a key role in influencing my career. In 2008, I attended my first UN IAF workshop in Glasgow, and I ate breakfast by accident that morning with Dr. Maslan Othman, meaning I saw her in the hotel and asked her if I could sit with her, and she was kind enough to let me, and we walked together to the workshop, and thus began my opportunity to see, just as you said, the unique community that is brought together of participants. This year, I was so interested in the range. I think it was quite brave, in fact, to actually use the workshop to claim that every country really is thinking about exploration, and that people who typically we don't picture being involved with exploration truly are. This word inclusiveness, I sometimes struggle with because it makes it sound as though we're saying we are already involved with space, but we invite other people, we include you. But actually, I don't want to say that. The word that came to mind for me was a bit of humility, because the examples from the speakers showed that people all over the world, even those we didn't know yet, we, the people who think of ourselves as the space community, are also doing activities to bring education and data and technology to benefit their society. Some of the examples were stories of people who had learned astronomy but considered that it was most important to share their learning with, in this case, children who lived far from major cities. So we heard from our colleague, Susan Marbana Owen, who is taking a traveling telescope all around Kenya. What's great about that story, though, is not that astronomy was missing. The places where she's traveling are some of the best places to see the Milky Way just with the naked eye. So obviously astronomy is there, and there's a great tradition of their historical and local knowledge of astronomy. So really we're just making a connection between what already was there and then this global community that is sharing it. So the humility for us to see what is happening in communities we don't often engage with. And I love the examples of the way that people highlighted different kinds of senses people might use. Someone who might be not using their eyes normally the way that I use them, but someone who has other tactile senses and could experience astronomy data through tactile models of galaxies or through sonified examples. For me, I have one way I'm used to experiencing it, but they have another, and for us to both appreciate increases all of our ability to collaborate. And so I just want to join in with the themes. I had the honor to chair one of the sessions. In fact, we were enjoying it because it was an all-female panel, myself as moderator and all the panelists. We were celebrating not because we don't appreciate, of course, our colleagues from other genders, but because we were celebrating that we had so much to say and that we could offer something in our dialogue. I just want to highlight as well that we can continue to keep asking what are the ways that people are already bringing new things to the space community. And some of the research we'll see throughout the week, especially in the culture and art sections in the IAF as you're ongoing, I think that help us to extend or apply the lessons we learned in the session. So thank you.
Thank you very much. Very inspiring, I believe, also your personal path or the process which brought you to become what you are today. So very, very interesting. And then, last but not least, Shirish Ravan from the Office for Outer Space Affairs. I understand you have a short presentation on the recommendations and the results of the workshop. Please.
Okay, thank you, Simonetta. The scene is already set by other speakers, so I'd like to just quickly go through what are the outcomes of workshop. So workshop always happens 3 days before IAC, and often Friday, Saturday, and Sunday. So we chose this year a very important topic. Why we chose inclusiveness? Because inclusiveness is the key to implementing the Sustainable Development Goals, and space has a lot to contribute to leaving no one behind. So that is why we chose this particular topic. We had 110 participants from 47 countries. That itself demonstrates how inclusive it was. And look at this little graph there, male and female ratio. Almost we are close to 50% male-female ratio in the participants and also in the speakers. Most of the workshops we just have 30% women participant, but we reach here 50. And thanks to my colleague Iriana who put a lot of efforts to get this balance. We had very important keynote speeches from eminent speakers. We had high-level panel, plenary sessions, poster, and interactive sessions. Especially in interactive sessions, we touched very special groups that are normally left behind, disabilities, women, those kind of groups, people of colors. So we really crossed the boundaries of normal thinking. So basically we talked about space for inclusiveness, mobilizing everyone, opportunities for emerging countries, space exploration for everyone, and developing collaboration for space application. These were main topics that we handled during our workshop. Coming to what United Nations Office for Outer Space Affairs doing on regular basis around the years to contribute to inclusiveness is we have space for sustainable development program, we have space for youth, space for women, access to space for all, and all these programs are contributing to sustainable development goals, ensuring the gender inclusiveness or inclusiveness of the countries, emerging space countries they are lagging behind. So whole effort is to basically bridge the divide between spacefaring countries and developing countries through several programs that we have. And they were presented and people were invited to participate in our programs. Now, key highlights of our workshop was, this workshop offered totally new perspective to the space-related activities, that is inclusiveness. The head of space agency, the emerging countries, or the industries that made the presentation, everyone had this word in their presentation, inclusiveness, how inclusive they can be while running their program. So this is a completely new perspective and which is very, very important for achieving sustainable development goals. Inclusivity was, it was expressed through the space applications, explorations, and topics like planetary defense, space colonies, human aspects, space business, taxation. So wide coverage was demonstrated in the workshop. Important thing, we had very prominent presence of women speakers in our workshop. Some of the panels were totally women panels, and at one point I saw 3 men sitting and I thought, oh, this is a space for men, because so many women speakers were there. And then another woman came and said that, oh, okay, so it's a general panel again, not for. But it was really good to see that it shows breaking stereotype that women can also do this. And on the same day, on 18th, when we started workshop, we had all women spacewalk as well, which is quite a significant coincidence, I would say. So we had strong presence of NGOs, startups, private companies, besides the space agencies. It was highlighted that United Nations can play a neutral role in bringing inclusivity in whole program so that no one is left behind. And strong commitment to sustainable development goal was also demonstrated. We had a high-level high-level panel which was chaired by our director, Simona Dipipo, and we had head of space agencies, some have spoken here just now. So they also gave very important key message that we are left with only 10 years for implementing sustainable development goals. It is not much time. So we really need to close the space divide and the digital divide and use space as a critical infrastructure for the planet. And we have to have very strong commitment to SDGs. And SDGs is synonym to inclusiveness. We have to be inclusive in implementing all our activities and take everyone together. Key outcome of our workshop. The workshop outcome contributes to concerns raised by high-level political forum on sustainable development goals. It happened in July 2019. If you look clearly in this particular slide, that there has been not much progress on many sustainable development goals. Several sustainable goals are struggling to achieve what is supposed to be achieved. Therefore, this particular workshop becomes very important. It voices the commitment of space segment, space sector, space people to address the concerns raised through the high-level political forum 2019 on sustainable development, which was dedicated to empowering people and ensuring inclusiveness and equality. So outcomes of the workshop make a lot of sense to really fill the gap that has been created of the sustainable goals are lying behind. And I think with this particular workshop, we will have very consolidated efforts to fill that gaps and fill the lacunas that has been identified through the high-level forum, political forum. So these are main outcomes of our workshop. Thank you.
So, thank you very much. I believe that we have 1 minute for one question. Yes, I see someone there. You need this? Thank you, Christian.
Thank you. So I have a question for the moderator. What is the second one? So, I'm sorry, there's some issues. I can't read cursive because I am from the 21st century. So, there is this thing that I've noticed. When the UN talks about youth, specifically for. I was not ready for this. For youth, exactly, the definition for some reason is usually 18 to 35 as a youth. So I was wondering if you could consider lowering that age to a lower age than, I would say, 9 to, I would personally say 9 to 25, but that's just me. But it's up to you. I'm really sorry.
Okay.
If you don't mind me just giving some background, we have a colleague here who is avidly excited about applying space for the SDGs and would like to be able to offer it even though he is younger than the average youth that we work with.
Yeah, well, it's an interesting point. In reality, we at the UN and the Office for Outer Space Affairs, we are really trying to be as inclusive as possible, and we do believe that there is a clear indication that, for example, this is something that we've been studying when we started the Space for Women project. And we have been looking at several reports all over the world where it's clear that, for example, in particular for girls, there is a strong interest in STEM education also in girls and up to 11 years old, when they are 11 years old. And then for whatever reason, probably due to the social environment or reasons are not 100% crystal clear, even if we have few of them quite well identified, they lose interest in STEM education. So in the Space for Women project, we really would like to start focusing on young girls and trying to follow their career. Now, clearly this means that if we want to do this, it's a 20-year project because the moment, I mean, let's say around 10 years old until the moment in which you go through, I mean, education and then university, and then we would like to follow them a little bit as a mentor through the initial part of their career. So it's really 20 years project, and clearly we cannot afford that. So we need to probably target the various groups in terms of age also and in terms of requirements in a different manner, and this is exactly what we are trying to do. So to answer your question, we are thinking about that, but there are issues in terms of implementation, and for sure in the case of the Space for Women project would mean having a project of 20 years, which considering again the time, the speed at which we have, you know, technology running in developments in the speed in which the world is moving around, it's not so easy. But in any case, it's quite a good angle, and I would like to thank you for this question, because as I said, it's already in our pipeline, but we don't have the full answer for the time being.
Thank you.
I believe that we are out of time, or there is another question, okay?
So I saw that there's like a lot of goals that go around trying to incorporate more different peoples. I was wondering two things, but I guess I'll just ask one. So how are you trying to get other gender identities besides women involved? Because I'm sure there's also a lack of representation from things that aren't women or men in the STEM field as well, specifically space.
Yeah.
I can just highlight that one of the ways I approach this is I teach a class that gives a lot of history where we read about injustice toward a variety of groups, racial groups. Groups have different gender identities and sexualities. So part of our goal is to ask, we as people who would like to design things for space, how can we first learn from history, what has happened and what's harmed different groups, including those of different gender identities, and then ask, how can we apply that understanding in a conscious way so when we start to design and plan space missions, space technologies, we can have tools that are consciously seeking to reduce the barriers. It's something that I'm actually just getting started. It's the second time I'm teaching it, even this week. I went back to Boston yesterday to teach it. And I'm learning from colleagues. I'll mention I have students in the room who are working with me who are also spending time studying with indigenous communities or focusing on the role of artists. I can just have Fatima and Liz raise their hands. You can see them speak about it later in this week, but for us, it's actually an active area of research of what it means to understand historical injustices that have harmed particular groups and apply that to technology design so that our space missions and our space technology is actually more inclusive. Thanks for the question.
Okay, so I wanted to give a little bit of time for the panelists to round of final conclusions, but I see that we are out of time, so I believe I have to close because there is another event after us. So I'm very sorry because I'm sure that this would have been quite an interesting debate. Thank you very much because providing, this opportunity for us to summarize the discussions we had and interact with the public is always a good thing. So I hope that next IAC we will get 45 minutes.
Yeah, I promise. And please don't forget, if you are interested, grab your highlights of the Global Conference for Space for Emerging Countries, Morocco, this year. They are here in front.
And thank you very much. Thank you.